I remember the days. I could feel the restlessness, that something beautiful was going on somewhere. And then it felt like someone was calling out to me.
Hurry, hurry, or you will miss it.
I remember the road that led to the Martinez house. I remember the house on the hill, the wide, open porches that I glimpsed through the heat-shriveled tamarinds. 6 weeks ago, that house meant nothing to me. It had only been rented and occupied by Judge Del Valle and his family. 8 years ago, Julia Salas meant nothing to me. One day, I finally agreed to go neighboring with my mother, Doña Juliana, something that I rarely do. I can still remember what she had told me. It was there that I met Julia Salas. At first, I had addressed her as Miss Del Valle, thinking that she was the judge's sister. I had called her that for a while before my mother had corrected me. I had been embarrassed, but she was very understanding. She had told me a story of how she had kept calling a man named Manalang by another name. She told me that he had corrected her and that she never forgave him for it. We laughed. I figured our mothers wouldn't stop talking anytime soon. So Julia and I had gone off to chat some more on the porch. Right there, I had taken in everything about her. She would all become a ritual. Every Sunday, my mother and her sister would chat. The two of us would sit outside and do the same. I could feel that a warm feeling was building between the two of us, and I had liked it. I never once thought about Esperanza. I never thought of the consequences. I guess I never would have until Esperanza had asked me about where my mother and I went off to every Sunday.
Alfredo, I wonder where you go after church every Sunday. Back then, you used to wait for me outside. Where do you go?
In truth, to spend time with Julia. Well, I go home to work. Sometimes mother and I go to Judge Del Valle's house. Whenever Julia and I would speak to each other in our little place, everything seemed far away, as if we were the only people in the world.
Amusement?
No, you, it's spirit.
Are you so old?
And heart's desire, down there, the road was too broad to tread on my feet, to burn of mystery.
You've known me a few weeks, so the mystery.
I could study you all my life.
So long?
I should like to. Those 6 weeks flew by, but they had been so deep and charged with power and sweetness. Neither the past nor the future had relevance or meaning. I live only in the present, only with her, day by day. Live it intensely. The afternoon has seemed very short, hasn't it?
I wish to congratulate you, Mr. Salazar.
For what?
For your approaching wedding.
I knew that I owed her an explanation. But what could I have possibly said to her? What wouldn't hurt her? I listened to her, but the warmth in her voice was gone. She seemed detached, as if we were strangers. I tried to talk to her, but when I reached for her hand, she pulled it away. Our wedding was coming near, but Esperanza had gotten colder as well. Some days, we barely speak to each other, and most of the time, we argue about little things that don't concern us. But I didn't know that Esperanza was indirectly speaking of my infidelity, and this led to the biggest argument that we had ever had.
Why don't you speak out frankly before it's too late? You need not think of me and of what people will say.
One tries to be fair, but it's too hard. One would like to be fair for oneself, but that's too easy. One does not dare.
What do you mean? Whatever my shortcomings, and no doubt, there are men in your eyes. I have never gone out of my way, of my place, to find another man.
Esperanza, if you suppose
If you mean to take back your word, if you are tired of... Why did you tell me you are tired of me?
Eight years had passed since that day. I had become a successful lawyer, working hard to get to where I am now. But I still can't forget Julia. Even after I married Esperanza, my mind still go back to those afternoons I had with Julia. I'm not unhappy with my marriage. My life had simply ordered itself. No more struggles, no more stirring up emotions. At times, Esperanza felt hopeless, but I had always been gentle to her, tender, but immeasurably far away, beyond her reach. Fate had brought me to Caliluz that night. I was working on a case, the people of the Philippines versus Belena, that sent me there. The thought of Julia Salas in the quiet place made me feel sad, and I wondered what my life would have been if I married her instead. I asked around, and finally, I found myself in front of her door, and there she was, the same as the first time I saw her. Good morning.
Good morning. What are you doing here?
I'm here on some little business.
Would you like to come in?
We spoke for a while. We spoke as if nothing ever happened, like we were back on the porch that we spent all of those afternoons in. There was something different about her, or maybe there wasn't something different in me. For the first time, I had realized that I had been chasing an impossible dream, seeing the light of dead stars. I had bid her goodbye and decided to return to the business that I was to deal with. An immense sadness of loss came over me, like homesickness for some immutable refuge of the heart far away, where faded gardens bloom again, and where live on in unchanging freshness the dear, dead loves of vanished youth.